I would like to present Boodie Cave and the Southern Route Migration to Australia, presented by me, Courtney Smith. Boodie Cave is located off the northwest coast of Australia on Barrow Island. It is also on the northwest coast of Barrow Island itself. The original owners are the Burra Balaji Dinalaji. It dates from around 51.1 to 46.2 thousand years ago. It was part of the Sahul landmass, which you can see from the map. There is the blue area that was all above water before the end of the last ice age. And you can see Barrow Island here is a part of it, and it remains not submerged because of its elevation, which leaves it as a kind of time capsule of life on this landmass before it was submerged. It was flooded around 6.8 thousand years ago from the melting of the glaciers at the end of the last ice age. During this time, the land of the Sahul landmass became tidal pools and mangrove forests. You can see from this picture here, it gave people many resources, either terrestrial or marine resources. It means that we could have the ability to support many people on this migration, which is what kind of is thought what happened. Many people needed to be here to be able to people Australia. Life on the coast was changing because the ice caps were freezing a little bit, melting a little bit here and there until finally completely, almost completely melting at the end of the last ice age. So the coastline was moving in and out. You can see that some areas suggest boat use because even though the water was low, there's still areas where there was water and a boat was needed to pass between islands. We don't really have evidence of any boats, but this is probably because they're made out of very eroded material or they are submerged underwater now. But the mangrove forest provided plenty of wood for boat building. The evidence from earth charcoal showing activity of an actively moving population. Shipton states that with technology and forging adaptations to facilitate maritime colonization. The excavation at Boodie Cave was done by Peter Vaith and his team, Jane Skippington and Kane Ditchfield. It was pretty meticulous because it was done in modern times, 2013 to 2015. Seismological data analysis shows particles of large grains of limestone and calcite, but this layering is intermixing, kind of like a layer cake, because the coastline comes and goes. So the larger particles are around when the coastline is further away, and the finer particles come around when the coastline is closer because of more erosion. Across the whole cave, there's little vertical mixing of the matrix, except in one corner there was a tree that mixed it just a little bit. The methodologies used are accelerator mass spectrometry, or AMS, on charcoal and shells dating the site to around 51.1 to 46.2 thousand years ago. This has an accuracy of 95.4%, and so it's pretty accurate. Also, there was optically stimulated luminescence, or OSL, samples taken inside and outside of Boodie Cave with agreeable dating to the AMS. This test shows when the light was last touching the soil, and because the Boodie Cave is cut off from the mainland, there wasn't anybody that came back because the use of boats was lost during this time. There's also radiocarbon dating done on charcoal and teeth analysis that shows dating times to be accurate as well with the other dating and agreeable. There's also maritime findings, modified shells, with the oldest being 42.5 million thousand years old. There's other resources from meals such as shells and fish and invertebrates. Fiona Hook found 8 Milo knives dating to around 46,000 years ago. You can see on the left here is a Milo knife. They were used for scraping, they were used for hides, they were used to put on sticks as a spear point. They could be used for fishing. There was also decorative beads found made out of shells around 10,000 years ago, which shows the site's kind of been occupied from 50,000 years ago to 10,000 years ago and was finally abandoned when the waters rose at 6.8 thousand years ago. The terrestrial findings are desert resources. There are seeds that were ground into a powder. From what I understand, they don't really know what it was used for, whether it was for meals or whether it was for religious purposes. But there's also marsupial bones from meals. There's also the trade of stone lithics from the mainland because most of the lithics found at Barrow Island and in Boodie Cave itself are not from Barrow Island. They are from the mainland. There was 7,694 lithics found in Boodie Cave. It kind of shows a either higher class or two different groups living on the islands because the closed air sites have like a better technology and just better stones than the people in the open air sites. Boodie Cave definitely strongly supports the southern route hypothesis. The dating is pretty similar to Timor-Leste site Lali. That site dates to 56,000 years ago, while Boodie Cave is at 51,000 years ago. And the currents make it really easy for somebody to launch off the east coast of Timor-Leste and paddle on over to Sahul. The launch points beforehand too as well from each island before Timor-Leste. You can see the next island to be able to travel. And on the last one between Timor-Leste and Sahul, it's kind of suggested that you can't see the island, but if you are at a high enough elevation, then you can totally see it. The dates also chronologically from kind of where we think they would be potentially landing compared to further down the coast. So the northern part of the coast, if you travel down south or if you go south inland, those dates are more recent compared to older dates of the top of Australia. The northern route had some troubles. The sailing was on stronger currents, so it was much easier to be lost or be taken out into sea. And there was also less resources because they did not have the tidal pools in the mangrove forests that the southern route has. And so they had to rely on fishing and gathering for resources. And also on this route, there are Denisovans. They existed from 15 to 30,000 years ago, which is well after when Boodie Cave was originally settled at the 51.1 thousand years ago. Normally, hominins tend to avoid each other, though there is some intermixing. Normally, they tend to avoid each other. You can see here at the bottom picture here, there's the modern human skeletons here. We've been at this point for 200,000 years now. And you can see next is the Neanderthal skull, and then after that is the Denisovan skull, which is much more robust. So I imagine that we would avoid somebody bigger than us like that. What I found most interesting about this was the tidal pools in the mangrove forest in between the time of the melting glaciers. You kind of think of Australia as just a desert, but this area was full of resources and full of people, and it's really interesting to see what they were doing at this time. And I also like the ability to date these artifacts and that we have the ability to date these artifacts so far back in time because we could know for sure that, yes, this is what they had, this is what they were doing. So I found that really neat. I really liked it. To further study Boodie Cave, we don't automatically give the land and the sites that we find to the original owners. The kind of practice has been to excavate it and pick at it and then hand it over to the original owners. So I think that we should just automatically give it to them and see what they want to do with the site, because there's many more sites around Boodie Cave and on Barrow Island and in the surrounding waters because of the landmass of Sahul. There's plenty of underwater excavations kind of happening in the area, but it's also difficult to find things underwater because of currents and because it's just generally difficult to excavate under the water and it's much more costly. We could do more study of Boodie Cave because from what I understand, it was only Peter Bates and his team that studied and excavated the site. So new excavations might lead to different discoveries. The site and the whole island kind of also needs to be protected from the industrial work that's happening. If you look at it from Google Maps, you can see that there's probably not any houses and it's just all industrial work on the island. So the sites could be being damaged from all this. And I hope you enjoyed Boodie Cave as much as I did because it was great. Thanks.